Greetings, everyone. This is Payman Lorenzo, host of the Leaders What podcast. Today, I have another great guest, my new friend, Mr. James Dakin from the UK. We were connected to our common good friend, wonderful friend, Stephen Gillen. Incredible people. I've heard nothing but praise about this man, even though I haven't had the pleasure of talking to him yet. Hopefully next week I'll talk to him. But yeah, we had a wonderful conversation 2 weeks ago, I believe. It was a long conversation, supposed to be for half an hour, went for an hour and 90 minutes, a football match, basically, or a rugby match, whatever you want to look at it. I'm more into football. James is more into rugby, so we're going to talk about that as well. So a little bit about James is, first of all, you may not see it when you talk to him, but if you get to see him in person, you'll see he's a pretty big guy. 6'7". That's the first thing that jumps into you. That's why in rugby, as a number 8, he was in his element, then into and cricket. And yeah, so he grew up in a well-off family, however, with an abusive father at the age of 10. He had to leave the family's house. He lost his childhood at the age of 10 and went to a boarding house. And while talking to him, the question came, would you change your childhood, your parents, your path? And he said, absolutely not. These were, yeah, sure, they were very painful to go to, but those were blessing in disguise and built him to be the man that he is now. And in his business is known as the growth pioneer. And we'll look into that as well in a moment. And it's all about helping others, about spreading happiness, joy, make a stranger smile, one of his motto that I love. And yeah, so a lot of things we can unpack. I'm excited, and I have a feeling that me and him, we're gonna do more than one episode because there's so much content material that we can unpack. So without any further ado, James, my friend, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Payman. It's an absolute pleasure to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. So for people who don't know you, we're gonna talk about your business, your impact in a moment, but tell us, as a person, as a human being, as a man, who's James?
Well, it's a great question. I'm a combination of over 50 years of living, and a lot of the early years should have been beautiful and weren't. And then, like as you've already referenced, difficult upbringing, alcoholic, abusive father, parents split at the age of 10, and then I was shipped off to a boarding school. Which I loved the life of the boarding school, it was a brutal wrench away from the family home that I've been living in, and that's taken me many years to kind of come to terms with. And but what has given me, in terms of who am I, what has given me is an absolute fundamental desire to help people transform their lives, to believe in themselves, to like themselves, and to love themselves. That I think encapsulates sort of my mission, if you like. It's my passion, it's my mission, it's what I live for, it's what drives my children mad when we meet people and we meet strangers in the street and we get talking. And I certainly start sort of supporting, helping. And that's what I love to do. That is my absolute mission now.
Love that. We're going to unpack that in a moment, but what I usually like to start with is asking my guest a series of rapid fire questions to further get to know them as a person. Ready?
Go for it.
All right. Tell us, what makes you happy?
So many things. My children.
What makes you smile?
Comedy, light-hearted banter, and people falling over.
That's a good one. Now, what sets your heart on fire? What makes your soul sing?
When I see somebody do something that they didn't believe they could do. And it doesn't matter whether I've been entirely responsible or just a fraction. It makes no difference. When I witness somebody or a team or a company doing something they didn't actually believe they could do, it's just the greatest feeling in the world.
Indeed. I'm with you on that one. Now, on the other side of the spectrum, what makes you sad and angry?
Abuse, cruelty, unfairness.
Absolutely. What scares you?
the power of the media to control public thinking and the public's willingness to believe what they read.
I agree. I'm with you on that one. What would you say is your personal number one superpower?
To see the truth in somebody.
Mm, love that. What is one thing that you did not value before, but now you're valuing more and more?
My gentleness.
Mm,
I grew up thinking it was a weakness because I didn't have the confidence in myself. And I was told at the age of 19 that my gentleness would move mountains the moment I stopped apologizing for it.
oh, love
And
that.
at the age of 52, a few years ago, I discovered what that meant. So it only took me a mere 30 years or something to work it out. But that's the quality that I now appreciate more than I ever did.
Absolutely. Now, the other way around, what is one thing that you valued a lot before, but you don't value anymore?
That I don't value anymore. The idea of fame.
Mm, yeah, for sure. When was the last time you had a really, really hearty laugh to the point of having literally tears coming down your face, stomach aches, and all that, rolling on the floor because of an amazing laugh, something really funny?
I would imagine that was a couple of weeks ago, probably at my own expense, but it was with my son and daughter, so it was almost certainly at my own expense.
Awesome. You like traveling, do you?
I do.
We can do an entire episode just on traveling, but we'll do that another time. However, I'd like to take you down a different type of traveling, down memory lane. Remember when we kids growing up, people around us, family, friends, relatives, teachers, neighbors always ask us, "Hey, James, what do you want to become when you grow up?" What was your answer to that question as a young boy?
It was a vet. No, it was a vet. It was very clear. I wanted to be a vet from a
Wow.
very young age, right up until I discovered that they would need chemistry and physics to qualify, and that James Herriot, who was a very famous English character in the veterinary scene, he wrote many books, and it made veterinary science so popular that to qualify for it, you had to get the maximum top grades you could ever get. And frankly, I spent most of my life on the playing fields and sporting fields, and I was never going to sit down and work that hard to get a qualification. And so veterinary science is what I wanted to become, and I didn't.
What inspired you initially to become a vet? Did you have a animal at home, or what was it?
Yes, grew up with dogs, always loved animals. I just had a love of animals, a love of nature. My mother instilled a great love of nature, of birds, of animals, of just being out and about. And I suspect those two just went hand in hand. I had a dog when I was young that I loved. And I loved the books, the James Herriot books. And that combination of things, just so for a young child, I just like, well, obviously I want to be a vet, live in the country, live in the countryside, looking after animals, being a hero, and not dealing with people. I thought it'd be brilliant.
Wouldn't be, that's for sure. Wow. Now, growing up, what was your relationship with school? Did you love school or did you hate school?
So when I was sort of in my early years, school was lovely. I mean, I actually lived in the school that I went to. My father was a headmaster, as I think we said, and so I went to his school. So my home was where I went to school, and it was an amazing place. I mean, it was an English country mansion, or a country estate, as we would call it. Huge lawns, woods, lake, outdoor pools. I mean, it was the most extraordinary place for anyone to grow up in. And they'd built the school onto it. So on the one hand, it was just the most idyllic place. So I loved school. You know, why wouldn't I? I had friends and I just had a wonderful time. But then my father kind of ruined that. And so when we left, I then went from living in the school I'd always been, so I never really left home, to overnight being in a boarding school. And it was a wonderful boarding school. It was a really lovely boarding school. But for a 10-year-old who had had 10 years of living at home with mum and dad and sister, always being at home with that familial environment, to suddenly overnight and with no real preparation, literally leave home. And I found that incredibly hard. And it would take me 3 days. I had 3 days of basically crying my eyes out, but showing nobody, because it was a boys' boarding school, and you just know not to show weakness. So parts of your emotional development just shut down because they have to. You're in survival mode, and literally you go into survival. But then after 3 days of being there, when I'd made friends, and this would be every single term, be about 3 days, you couldn't take me away, because it was a young boy's idyllic world to grow up in. It was sport every day. It was walking, it was mountaineering, it was swimming, it was rugby, it was cricket, it was playing outside, it was music, it was drama. And that was one of the most wonderful things to be exposed to.
Beautiful. We're going to talk about your relationship with your father in a moment, but one question that came to mind as you were speaking is, how was it going to school where your father is the schoolmaster, the headmaster, the principal? How does it feel like?
Do you know, it's a really interesting one, because I've met a few people who've had this, and basically you're on a lose-lose situation. If you misbehave to try and get in with the kids mucking about, you're doing it because you're the headmaster's son. If you choose not to misbehave and you choose to say, no, I don't want to do that, it's because you're the headmaster's son. So you kind of get it both ways. So you can't really win. But, you know, that aside, friends are friends are friends, and you know, kids make friends. And because I was so sporting, I was always in the various sporting teams, and that's helped me my entire life. You know, to be a wanted member of a team always helped, because that was nothing to do with being the headmaster's son, because everybody knew I was on merit. So that helped me enormously. But yes, headmaster's son, generally speaking, don't recommend it.
I've had a student in one of my classes way back in high school in France. He was the math teacher's son, and poor guy got bullied to no end, you know?
Well, I mean, my father was the headmaster.
Yeah.
My godfather was the second master, his deputy. An unofficial uncle was the maths teacher. And the only person that was adored by the kids was my mother, who was the music teacher. And she was just adored by the boys.
So you were basically,
so 1 out of 3 worked. 1 out of 4 went down really well.
so basically we almost enjoying like a position almost of royalty, celebrity in school because of, hey, everybody
Well,
loves.
I mean, I was between the ages of 7 and 10. So very young. So, you know, at that age, and this is in the 70s.
Yeah.
So life was a lot more innocent than it is today. We were a lot more sheltered from everything. And this was a boys' boarding school. So it was a very sheltered upbringing where, you know, yes, I was the headmaster's son, but I had great friends, and it was a wonderful life, with the exception of what went on behind closed doors.
Yeah. What was your favorite subject in school growing up?
Geography.
Wow.
Well, certainly as I went into sort of secondary, sort of public school, sort of 13 to 18, geography was one of my favorite topics, because a lot of it was outdoors.
Was it because you also had a thirst for exploring the world and seeing the world?
Well, I would love to say it was that altruistic, but at that age, it was probably more to do with just getting outside and being outside. And physical geography would explain why the land looked the way it looked. And that just appealed to me. You know, I enjoyed the sciences. I mean, fundamentally, it depended on the teacher. I think one of my greatest passions was English. And I adored English. And if I had one regret, it was being persuaded not to do English for A-level, because I was already doing 2 essay topics. And they said, do maths, it's really easy. It wasn't for me. So that's probably my one regret from school, is not going down that route and doing English.
What was your least favorite subject?
Well, that's a tough one, because, like I said, it's so teacher dependent. I mean, I remember I remember adoring English and then loathing it. And it had nothing to do with the subject and everything to do with the teacher, and then adoring it again at a later stage. In music, you know, I used to play musical instruments and I adored it because I had a teacher that was all about just play, play, play. And then I changed teachers and she only wanted me to strip the instrument apart and put it back together again. And it just killed it for me. So any subject where the teacher made it relevant, interactive, engaging, that was the thing. If they could make it interesting, as children, we only know how to learn. That's just what we do as kids. And if we were to use adult language, we practice accelerated learning as children because that's all we know how to do. We then have it taught out of us and we lose it. So we now have accelerated learning courses for adults, which is basically how to enter the world of the child and remind ourselves how to enjoy learning. Because if we enjoy learning, or we have a burning platform for learning, we just learn. It's not difficult. And we just get it the wrong way around. We teach people, you know, we don't teach people to be interested. We teach them to be worthy. And there are very few worthy things that get the pulse rating and have us looking forward to it. There'll be some, I'm sure, but there aren't many. Whereas, you know, be excited, get kids excited. When I used to train teachers, it was all around getting the children excited and giving them an experience, and then they can learn anything.
Absolutely. You mentioned about the importance of a teacher in a subject. I can resonate with this because I used to love math growing up. And then in grade 6, I had a teacher that completely turned me off. And it was very hard for me to catch up. And I was always behind in math because of that. Because from one, you completely switched off. And when you switch off for one entire year, it's very hard to catch up. So that was because of a teacher. So a teacher can be really important for the better or for the worst. Absolutely.
And, you know, and that goes out of school as well. That travels with us wherever we go in life. You know, we all have people who have come into our life in many different aspects, be it personal relationship, professional relationship, work, and they've transformed our experience of that moment into something better and something else. And so teachers, you know, I've done a lot of work with teachers, and I've been a teacher. My parents, my grandparents were teachers. I've been a teacher. I have an enormous respect and time for people who dedicate their lives to supporting children.
Absolutely. Beautiful. You mentioned you love sports. So what are your favorite sports in school?
Well, I played rugby and cricket, both to very high levels. They were my two primary sports along with swimming. And I was very lucky. I was very blessed. I was blessed with an ability to play to a high level. And because I enjoyed it so much, I trained hard. And because training wasn't hard. Training was doing what I loved a lot. And so yes, rugby, cricket, and swimming would be the three that I would say. But anything with a bat and a ball, or with a ball, basically.
So of those three, which was your favorite?
If I had to, by the time I got to 17, 18, I was looking to become a professional sportsman, and I had opportunities from first division clubs, as it was back in the day, for rugby and cricket. And if I was to choose, I had chosen in my head, I was going to go down the route of rugby. I used to play number 8, and I just loved it. And, you know, my contemporaries and people that I was playing with, both in the rugby and the cricket, they went on to represent their countries. So I was playing with future internationals at the same level. And had I had the opportunity, if I hadn't slipped a disc and had a back operation and my life go in a different direction at the age of 22, then I would have pursued a sporting career.
Up to what level did you reach?
Well, in cricket, it was sort of final England trials at the under-19 level, so sort of national trials, down to the last 22. And in rugby, I was beginning to be picked for representative teams at that age. You know, so I was 18, 19, 20, that kind of age. And first division clubs were interested in signing me. So I was at sort of first division club level, where first division would now be the Premiership in the United Kingdom.
Yes.
So that's the level I was at, you know, one underneath international level, with an opportunity to potentially go on, which may or may not have happened. You know, we'll never know, but it didn't happen.
Mm. Imagine we're in the same class, say in grade 10, 11. What kind of guy were you back then? Were you the quiet type, the nerdy type, the superstar, the chatterbox? What kind of guy were you back then?
So I would have come across as the superstar.
Mm.
And when I say that, I don't mean to say that because I was brilliant at everything. I was that because that was my coping mechanism for chronic insecurity. So my father, and then changing schools and everything, had me genuinely chronically insecure. And my cover for that, my coping mechanism, was to appear so confident. It was like a shield of armor. I was so confident that nobody would scratch the surface. Nobody would say, "Are you really? Let's dig a bit deeper," because it was such an all-consuming, powerful front. And all you had to do, though, was look under the surface, and you would find somebody who didn't believe in themselves, who thought they were a fraud, who didn't think they were worth it. And so I would come across as very arrogant, I imagine. Some people would think really arrogant, big-headed. I wasn't, but I completely understand why people would have thought that. Or super confident. And with the sporting side of me, I was always representing every school I went to, every team I went to. I was always one of the best in the business. So it was an easy mantle to carry in that respect.
Were you popular with the girls in school?
Well, it was a boys' school.
Ah,
There was a girls' school down the road which my sister went to, and I was friends with her friends. But this was where my chronic insecurity kicked in. You know, yes, I was popular because I was friendly and I was nice, but I was useless. I mean, I was hopeless. Give me a dance floor and I would have preferred to have root canal surgery without anesthetic. You know, it was just, I mean, I had rhythm, but every arm and every leg would appear to have a different rhythm. And I was so self-conscious that it was just painful.
I mean, if Peter Crouch can dance, there's hope for everyone, right?
There is opportunities for everybody, if that's the case.
Wow. So you mentioned about confidence and this being your coping mechanism. You said nobody can see, everybody's thought you were super confident, even arrogant and cocky. Was there anyone in your circle that was able to see past through that and see you for what we were truly?
Well,
Maybe outside of family, maybe outside of family.
At that age, I had a teacher called Kerry Wedd. I can remember him today. He was a games teacher. He did other things as well, but he was a games teacher. And he saw me for who I was. When things didn't go well, he had this wonderful quality when I went to see him once. And he just said, "I've been waiting for you to come and see me."
Wow.
And he was the most wonderful man for me.
Wow. How did you react to him seeing through all of that and basically seeing straight through you? Were you?
Well, at that age, it was an amazing experience because he was so supportive of me. It was never a threat. You know, and he didn't see through me in ways that would ask me awkward questions. He completely believed in me, supported me, wanted me to be as good as I could be. And because I had that relationship with him, when he then did what he did, which showed me that he had read me all along, which I only really realized in hindsight. I didn't know it at the time. It was never perceived as a threat. He was friend, not foe.
Beautiful. Tell us a little bit about the environment you grew up. You said on one hand, it looked perfect on the outside, but on the inside, it was quite, there was.
So, I mean, like I said, on the outside, English estate, country mansion, a front lawn and a back lawn measured by the acre, by the hectare, woods, pool. It was a most amazing place. But my dad was a very serious alcoholic, and he was a very damaged soul, and he specialized in the systematic abuse of his two children. So my sister got it physically and sexually. I got it emotionally and psychologically. And it was, I mean, I have almost no memory of it. I have very, very few memories before the age of 10. So they've just been blocked. Having children actually has helped raise some of the happier memories of being a child, because I've been enacting them with my own children. But that was dreadful. And I remember a story where my mother told me that she was called into a staff meeting. My father was away on business, and she was asked to come into a staff meeting. And every single member of staff in the school was in this meeting. The domestic staff, the matrons, the cooks, the academic staff, the pastoral support staff, every member of staff was there. And they just said to her, "What would you like us to do? Your husband is destroying your son. He's gone from the highest top set academically to so far below the bottom set that we're now falsifying his test results. We're lying to your husband, because if we were to tell your husband that he's gone that far down, it would be really damaging, and it would be even more damaging on James." So that's the impact it had. But I only know that sort of through story. I have no real memory of that. But she was told by my godfather, you have to get your children out of here. For the sake of your children, you have to leave. And so she did.
Wow. So your mother, you and your sister, the three of you left?
We literally left overnight, and I remember it as though it was yesterday. My aunt had come to stay with what I now know as a removal van, but she told me that her car was broken and that she'd had to borrow a truck. And then I remember waking up in the morning, my mother waking me up, and I woke up and said the words, "What's wrong? How can I help?" And I woke up saying that. I have no explanation for that. That's just, I woke up and she just said, we're going away. And she had just packed the bare essentials, left everything. And we literally drove from Northumberland, Newcastle, on the right, on the east side of the UK. We drove across the middle of the country to the Lake District, where my grandparents had just retired to an idyllic country cottage. And they had just moved there to retire. And their eldest daughter arrived with two children, and their youngest daughter arrived with a dog. So we just kind of shoehorned into this room. And I tell my kids what it was like. I mean, it was wonderful, but our room was so small that my sister and I shared a room, and we had two single beds, and they were in the like a letter L, and the corners of the bed would touch each other, and then the headboards were against the walls. So it was a tiny, tiny room. In today's world, you would say it wouldn't even qualify as a bedroom. It was that small. But we slept there very happily for 7 years or so. So and then the neighbors were across the valley, at the top of the valley, at the bottom of the valley. I walked out into the countryside. It was just another idyllic, wonderful place, but a loving and a supportive place.
Yeah. So from that moment on, did you have any further contacts with your father, or that was the end of it?
No. My mum always wanted us to have contact with my father. At that age, I had no idea what had happened. I didn't know the extent of what he was, the extent of the groups that he was part of, and the damage that inflicted on people, and my sister. And so I would have access. He would come watch me play sports. Occasionally in the holidays, we would go and have a weekend with him. It was never more than a weekend. So she did what she thought was best and gave us access to, which was okay for me, but it didn't stop the abuse for my sister. So that was difficult, but in hindsight, my sister never said anything because they don't, you know, it's our
Especially
little
back
secret.
then. Yeah.
It's our little secret is what they're told. And that's a challenging relationship. And my sister's an extraordinary woman that's had to grow up and come to terms with what she went through as a child. And I have no idea how that happens. I have no idea how you come to terms with that. But for me, I then had the opportunity, I had the challenge of discovering what happened when I was about 18-ish. At the time, I was getting a relationship back with my father, and I really wanted to have a relationship with my father. And my sister was amazing. She said, look, have a relationship with dad. You know, he's your dad. He's our dad. There's no reason you can't have a relationship with him. But of course, having a relationship with the man that caused the most damage to the people I loved the most and myself, that was a strange experience to have.
Mm-hmm. So when later on, when you grew up, your sister grew up, did your father at any time come to terms and apologize? Did he realize what he was doing?
We never had that conversation. He did say to me he'd been a lousy father. He quit alcohol overnight when he had a pacemaker put in. And, you know, we had a fairly decent relationship towards the end. We would share conversations on sport. We would share conversations on other topics. I hugged him once in my entire life. And I said, and I actually gave him a warning that I was coming in for a hug. I said, Dad, I'm about to come and hug you. Prepare yourself. Literally.
Wow.
And I went and gave him a hug. And it was the only hug I've ever had from my father. That was the kind of relationship. And, you know, it's hard to compare previous generational behavior with how we are today, because it's so very, very different. But it doesn't make it any better. You know, we can understand it, but it doesn't excuse it.
Sure.
And when he was an alcoholic, he was a very abusive man.
So now that you're looking at things from the eyes of maturity, wisdom, and spiritual awakening, we both know that life is a school. We come here to learn, grow, and the people that are here to assist us, even to painful events. But at the highest level, they're doing that to help us to grow, to ascend. So one of the things that changed my life is asking empowering questions. To it doesn't matter, regardless of what's happened to me. Even before, I used to ask these empowering questions such as, why me? What did I do to deserve this? Why is life so unfair? Why? But then that's not helping in any way. Then I understood and realized that I need to ask better, more empowering questions such as, what is this trying to teach me? What is the lesson for me to learn to that? So now you, James, when you look at your childhood, how your father treated you, you look at that with the eyes of wisdom, maturity, and spiritual awakening. When you ask those two questions, key questions, what was that trying to teach you? What was the lesson for you to learn to that? What is your answer?
It's a great question.
Okay.
And let me answer it in a slightly different, or let me ask a slightly
Please.
different question, which is related to that, which is, would I change my childhood? And it's a similar question, and I'll try and answer your question by answering that question.
Sure.
Because on the face of it, the answer is yes, absolutely, I would change a whole heap of it. But then when you go through that learning and growth, and you have your spiritual journey and your physical journey and your emotional journey and everything, as you say, and you mature. Actually, when I look at who I am today and the impact that I help people have on their own lives, and that's an important way around. It's not that I believe that I have that impact on their life. You know, the work that I do helps other people impact their lives, and that's the empowering part. I wouldn't change it, however dreadful it was, however much heartache and pain it's caused, because it undoubtedly gave me my burning passion to help people get out of pain, hurt, discomfort, insecurity, vulnerability. And I wouldn't have it without that. You know, if I see somebody having a difficult time, I've got the ability, if they're prepared to go there, to support them come out of it. And I wouldn't have had that desire to learn. I wouldn't have gone down the path that I went down in learning, in studying, if I hadn't had that. If I'd just become a sportsman and I'd been a very happy child, and I'd have had a different life.
Absolutely.
Not necessarily better, not necessarily worse, but it would have been very different, I imagine. So it's taught me tolerance. It's taught me understanding. It gave me the gifts, which I suspect we all have, but it made me at a very, very young age hone and master gifts of reading people, which I'm not, we're all slightly fallible in that, but I had to for my survival. If I couldn't predict how my father was just by looking at him at a distance, I didn't know how to prepare. It gave me the linguistic skills at the age of 4 to be able to turn public humiliation around so that people would laugh with me, not at me, which was a wonderful tool until later in life. Like so many survival mechanisms, they're great at helping us survive. And then when we come into adult life, later life, they become the opposite, and they become a straitjacket that keeps us restricted. You know that analogy? The cage that protects us becomes the prison that restricts us.
Absolutely.
And so having to work on myself, my own personal confidence, my own belief, learning to believe in myself, learning to like myself, that was a challenge. And learning to love myself, which is a perpetual aspiration. And I get glimpses of it every now and then, when I can say, yes, I feel in love with who I am. I get glimpses of that, and I get moments of that. But the believing in myself and the liking myself, that's been a 30-year, 40-year journey. And it will never end. That's the thing, I don't believe we ever fully master that. I'd love to be proved wrong. I'd love to prove myself wrong, if I'm brutally honest. But that's the journey that I've been on. And that actually has formed the fundamental approach that I take when I work with people, teams, companies, which I never saw coming either. It wasn't something I set out to do. And very few of us, I think, end up doing what we set out to do. And that's the upbringing. So what did my upbringing give me? It gave me my life.
Your purpose, your mission, because what you had to go through to overcome shaped you to become the person you're now, so you can inspire others going through that to help them overcome that. And also, one thing that I understood in life is that all the crap we go through and overcome, then they become our story. Then our stories becomes our gift. Then our gifts become our duty and responsibility to share them around us and around the world. How much of what you went through would you attribute to literally shaping up the path you're on right now, whether it's in your personal life, your business, your professional life, and so on and so forth?
I don't think you can separate them.
Yeah.
I think our early lives set us on, they give us our experiences, and they're good and they're bad and they're joyful and they're horrendous and they're all of those things. And we get to a certain age where we then have a choice. And it was explained to me this way, and this is a personal choice. I think this transcends religion. I may be told I'm incorrect there, but I believe it does. But life happens to us and life happens for us.
Absolutely.
We had this conversation before. If life happens to us, we are on the receiving end of whatever's happening. And it's, why has this happened to me? And it could be a good thing, it could be a negative thing. It's usually the negative one. Why is it happening to me? Why is it me? What's wrong with me? And it encourages the what's wrong with me belief system. If we choose to believe that life is happening for us, and it's literally a choice to believe this, and it's not right or wrong, but if we choose to believe that life is happening for us, and all it's doing is helping us prepare today for what we're going to be tomorrow, it doesn't change the experience we're going through at all. But what it does is it completely changes our experience of the experience and our mindset. And it's our mindset that it's the mindset that creates the lens we look through. The situation doesn't change, but how we look at it and how we can appreciate it changes everything.
Absolutely. It's not what happens to you, but how we react to it. The same
Well,
situation.
it is. And I had a
Yeah.
wonderful client I was working with the other week who was in rage, anger, despair. And in half an hour, he had become grateful. The situation hadn't changed. He became grateful and fortunate. And it was like, well, when he reached there, he just went, how on earth did you do that? And it was just like, I didn't do it. You did it. I just asked the questions and provided the catalyst, but you did the work. But what it continually shows me is it reinforces what you've just said. The situation doesn't change. How we show up in that situation changes everything. So our state, our physical state, our mental state, our emotional state, that's what we have control over. You know,
Absolutely.
we don't have control over the emotions that come up, but we do have control the moment the emotion has come up.
Absolutely. So when you were in your teenage years pursuing sports at a high level, was your father supportive of you?
So yes, he was. I mean, he was generally critical, but not, I never felt he was critical in a, I'm going to destroy you, I'm going to make life horrible. It just, he was never really accepting of the good bits. You know, I could play cricket and take 5 wickets and he would focus on how many balls I bowled weren't great, or I could get a high score and he'd be, well, that's really good. But there was never really any just celebration in that moment, just of the moment itself. And it's something that I have to watch with my kids because I can go down that habit.
There are people like that. Let's say just you mentioned a test. Let's say you get 95 or 97. Instead of celebrating a 95, 97, say, oh, why did you not get 100?
Well, exactly.
Why are some people like that? What do you think makes people like, is it because they just love and bringing people down? Or is it because instinctively it's their way of pushing you harder to go for perfection?
I think it can be all of those things.
Yeah.
I think it can be all of those things. When I used to teach, and this would usually be associated with fathers, not mothers, usually, not always. And I always got the impression that the father was trying to live out their unfulfilled sporting dreams through their children. And it would be damaging. It would just be damaging to the child. And so I think you've summed it up well. I would add to that the unfulfilled dream. And it's something that I really have to watch. My daughter's a wonderful swimmer and very competitive. My son is an incredible sportsman, doesn't have a competitive bone in his body. And I have to be so careful that I don't, in my desire to have them be as good as they can be to enjoy it, I don't try and coach them to the point where they no longer want to be it. It's been a wonder, and it's an ongoing lesson. It's come, oh no, just well done. That was wonderful. You were tremendous.
Exactly.
And not go down that other route.
Speaking of that, do you think that your father was deeply hoping that you would step up to the plate and become another successful, brilliant schoolmaster?
So I don't know. I think he would have loved me to be a sportsman.
Okay.
I think he would have really loved it had I been able to go on and play sport to a high level. I think he would have loved that. He was a sportsman himself. And I think he would have really loved that. Would he want me to go into teaching? I have no idea. I never, he was a brilliant headmaster. I mean, he was by all accounts, he was a visionary as a headmaster. The boys loved him. The parents really liked him. A lot of boys, when they went through the school, became parents and sent their children back to the school. And my father was still there. He was a 25-year headmaster, I think. So he was great at that. But would he want me to go into teaching? I honestly don't know.
So it was very nice, very supportive of other people except his own children. Am I getting it right?
Yes, he was not good to his children.
What do you think is the cause of that? Why?
Well, I'm just going to go down. I mean, why do people become serious alcoholics
Mm,
or serious drug addicts? Or why do people become very addicted to things? It's usually because of a lack of self-worth, a lack of self-love, a lack of self-belief. There's usually a fundamental lack, which the gambling, the drugs, the alcohol replaces. It numbs the pain. That's a phrase you hear a lot about people when they're alcoholic. It numbs the pain. In
mm,
that moment, I enjoy who I am. So, if we go back two generations, three generations to the parenting in those days, was he loved? I don't know. Was he ever shown authentic physical love? I suspect not. I don't know. It's very easy for us to look at people in all walks of life and go, he or she is a this or a that, and
mm.
we can condemn them very easily. But if we then say to ourselves, I've got no idea what this person has lived through. They might have lived through some horrendous stuff, and the very fact that they're able to function is an incredible experience, as an amazing achievement. And if we were to know that, would it change our experience of them? Well, it would change our experience of them, but it doesn't change how they're behaving, if that makes sense. So we can understand it. We don't have to accept it. But we condemn all too easily. The modern
Yes,
culture of canceling people because they've said something we don't enjoy, we don't agree with. It's easier to cancel them than to potentially face up to some uncomfortable conversations and truths. And I think
absolutely.
there's a lot of that going on.
Do you think that your father grew up with an abusive father himself, and I unconsciously was just repeating the same patterns with you?
Well, it's a common theme. Often children who have been abused to some extent become either abused or an abuser. That's a very common thread. The answer is I have no idea. I mean, my grandparents on his side both died when I was mid-single figures, I think, and I had very little contact. We saw them very rarely. And in those days, of course, they would provide us with some sweets, and the world was great. Go to the duck pond, feed the ducks. The world was great. That's all we really knew. So I don't know. I mean, his brother was also very dysfunctional. So we can only guess. But
Mm,
he was who he was. I loved him very much. I would have loved to have had a dad who was more hands-on. I would have loved to have a dad who was more loving. But then that comes back to your previous question. I changed more nappies and hugged my children more in the first 24 hours of their life than my father did in my entire life. And he died when I was in my early 30s, mid 30s.
maybe one of the
So it was.
lessons, yeah, absolutely. Maybe one of the lessons for you to learn through that, in life is important to know what to do, but it's 10 times more important to know what not to do, what not to say. Do you think you had to go through that yourself in order for you to become the best father possible and not repeat the same pattern, the same abuse that your father put you through, maybe?
Well, I think one of the challenges, one of the challenges parents have if they've come through a challenging upbringing, it could be because they had extreme poverty.
Mm,
And the risk is then not overcompensating by buying your children everything that you never had. If they didn't get love, the risk is not to smother your children to compensate. There's a real challenge there. And because there's no manual on how to parent, which frankly I think is just a failure on humanity's part, because they should be, because it would have helped me enormously.
sure.
But there was so for me, we have to be very careful that we don't do that. I think it was Bruce Lee, who said, don't buy your children everything you never got.
Oh, love that. Yes,
Teach them everything you were never taught.
that is
And
worthy.
I love that quote. And so to the best of my ability, that's what my ex, their mum, and I try and do. And we're very lucky, we're no longer together, but we're the best of friends. And
Beautiful.
not many couples that part can say that. And it
You
makes
know,
the world a difference. So we,
absolutely.
like most parents, we try hard and we fail every day. I think.
Life is an experiment by itself,
Yes, it is. Yes.
What you said about what you're teaching and all that reminds me, sorry, what you said about Bruce Lee reminds me of a powerful quote by Steve Jobs when he was in his deathbed. He said, "Don't teach your kids to be rich. Instead, teach them to be happy. Don't teach them the price of things. Teach them to understand the value of things instead of the price." That's so beautiful.
It is, and it's so true. To me, it's so true.
Absolutely, because the ultimate pleasure in life, the ultimate goal is happiness, not to be rich, but to be happy. Because you can be happy without money, but money doesn't make you happy. Sure, it helps you to get there. And style, as opposed to going on foot, you can get a
Actually,
nice
you know what it is?
limousine, or a
I love
nice
the
car.
phrase.
Yeah,
I love the phrase, money doesn't buy you happiness, but it can make misery more comfortable.
that's it. Perfectly summarized. Yeah, instead of going to an important meeting, say, in a cheap car and by bus, you can go in a nice luxury car or whatever, or a limousine, or by helicopter. Who knows? But the problem still is there. You can't
I
take it.
mean, money's one of those things where money's a catalyst.
Energy.
It's an energy. And so if you're very generous when you're poor, you will likely be very generous if you become rich. If you're very unhappy and very miserable in yourself and poor, adding money can make it worse, because now you go into the fear of lack. What if I lose it? And it doesn't help. So it's one of those things. Yes, having money makes a great big difference to people. You can make more of a difference in other people's lives. If you earn enough, you can become a philanthropist and give it away, and you can help set up amazing things. You look at many of the wealthy around the world, doing so many wonderful things, but it never gets reported because people don't want to associate. You think of how many terms there are around money that are negative in connotation. Filthy rich,
Yeah.
not gloriously rich, filthy rich. And there are so many phrases like that. And
Yeah, that's very true.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's a lovely phrase. If you don't like money, you've clearly never earned enough to give it away.
Powerful. Powerful.
I
Yeah.
think that was Tony Robbins that said that. It's I love that phrase. If
Absolutely.
you don't like money, you've never earned enough to give it away.
Because one of the greatest gifts that money buys you is the gratitude you see in the eyes of someone you just help. When you help
Yes.
someone that doesn't have anything, and you're not expecting, you don't want anything from them, they have nothing to give you other than deep gratitude in their eyes, it gives you goosebumps, almost makes me teary and very emotional.
And you know what? You can do that with money. You can do that with your time. You can do that with your knowledge. You can do that
Yes.
with your wisdom. You can do that just with your presence.
Absolutely.
And money is merely one of the ways in which you can do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Just like I keep saying, one of the greatest things you can do is just acknowledge people. You go to the supermarket, the cashier, read their names. Hey, how are you doing, Mary? How's your day going, John? Just acknowledge them as human being, not just as part of the furniture that people just ignore.
Well, we had this conversation last time, didn't we?
Yes.
I was 19 years old when I was on a course called the Silver Course. So Jose de Silva, very famous Mexican American, made an amazing series of courses. At the age of 19, I was sent. I would love to, I didn't know what it was. I was sent by my mother to go and do this program. And one of the things, the chap at the front, he was called Jack Black, not the actor Jack Black, but he was called Jack. He was Scottish, wonderful guy. And he said, if you want to help feel better, make a stranger smile every day.
That's it.
And the checkout counter was the one he said, and he said, the checkout counter is the easiest place in the world because you've got a captive audience. They can't go anywhere. They've got a name badge.
And
you
they
can
pay
say,
to
hello,
smile you.
Marjorie.
Yeah.
Hello, Marjorie. How are you? And you smile, and it's like, my goodness, someone's speaking to me. And I've done that. every single day, pretty much of my entire life. And it's now such a habit that my kids, oh, God, he's talking to somebody again. They give it that, but they understand the power of it.
That's powerful if you can inspire your kids to do the same thing, even if they don't do it. You doing it, you're gonna make someone's day.
Oh, well, you might make someone's day. You might make no difference in their life at all.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter. You just give, it's the art of giving.
When you give for others, when you help someone genuinely, sure, you do it for them, but ultimately, you're doing it for you too. It elevates you, it elevates your spirits, makes you more grateful. Seriously, because
And
for me, when you help someone really that needs help, there's nothing to give you. It gives me goosebumps. I call them, when you really help someone that has nothing to give you and you really help them and you see the gratitude in their eyes, I call it orgasm for the soul, because it really elates you in a way that, wow.
There's no feeling like it. I
No.
mean, yes, there are similar feelings, the birth of your child.
Yes.
If you have children,
Of course.
everybody understands that. But outside of that, there really is no feeling like it.
Yeah.
When you see somebody believe in themselves in a way they haven't believed in themselves,
Yeah.
realize they've been seen, and
Yeah.
it's okay. I get it with my clients, when they say, my God, I feel really seen by you. And that's okay. And it's just like, whoa, that you've never experienced this before. Or I feel heard.
Yes.
It is.
Yeah.
And there's nothing, we don't do it to feel good in ourselves. We do it because we can. We do it because we've got the gift, the passion, the intention, the desire, the want, and it's to help other people. It often comes from insecurity. If I can help you, you'll like me. So the two halves of my life, I've always done this, but the first half of, the first 2/3 of my life, if I'm honest, was from a deeply insecure place. Love me, like me, need me, want me. So I would give. Here's a wonderful, generous gift, but underneath it was, please like me back, please love me back.
Get me back. Yeah, yeah.
And a couple of people would spot it, and God, that was uncomfortable when they did. But then, and very recently, that whole ability to like myself now means that I can do it, and I don't mind if something comes back or not. It's the giving for the joy of giving, and it's just about them. And if I get a smile back, that'll do me every single time. Get a smile back, get a hello. Oh, I'm well, how are you? Just that does me. I leave feeling happier. They leave feeling, or they stay actually, because they can't move. They stay happier. And then the next person, they'll be in a bit more of an elevated mood, and hopefully it'll carry on and give them a better day.
You raise the vibration around you.
That's the aim.
Yeah.
That's the aim.
That's a powerful, beautiful note to finish this episode. It's going to be part 1. There's so much more we can and we will expand on for episode 2. So listen, really honored. Love talking to you. We can have long conversation. Last time we talked for almost 2 hours. Today also an hour and a half. So beautiful. If someone wants to connect with you, James, what's the best way to do so?
The best way will be sort of probably by email. And that's jamesdakin6170@gmail.com. There's a website coming. There'll be a website up very shortly. So by the time this goes out live, we'll have a full website up, and then we can add that to the back end of it.
Absolutely. Do you have social media like Facebook or LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, you'll find me on LinkedIn. I come from a generation where social media I treat with a great deal of skepticism and uncertainty. And more importantly, I just think that if I ever went into it, I'd never come out, because I'd be looking at pictures of happy cats for hours and then realize that half the day's gone. But there will be Facebook, there will be a Facebook page, there will be an Instagram page. There is already a LinkedIn page. That is all in process of being put together.
Absolutely.
Because I mean, if people sort of say, well, why have we never heard of you before? You've been around you've done this for over 30 years. You've worked with people all over the world. but you've never been out there. And that's because I've never been out there. You know, I've never had to market. I've always had clients referred and recommended. And it's only been when that burning passion to start maximizing the amount of people I can touch, impact, support, and learning around, you know, how social media, how the internet can make such an enormous difference in terms of the pandemic made an enormous difference to the way programs could be delivered, you know, online programs, online workshops, online masterminds. That's now become a much, much bigger thing since the pandemic because people had to. So that's my direction of travel, you know. So yes, I do take clients privately. Yes, I do take sort of individuals. I do take companies, but you know, my direction of travel will be to move more into the online world of program development and bring what I've learned over 30 years to package it into programs that people can do from home in their own time. That will be similar to the live experience, but obviously they don't get the full live experience, but it will give them a starter for 10. And it will help them on the journey, and it will give them tools which they can use with their families, with their friends. You know, I find a lot of the online world is around, do this course, become dependent on me, give me lots of money, make me rich. And every single time we talk, I'm going to sell you something else. Now, I understand the model, and I don't knock it at all because it makes people very wealthy, and that can then reduce the prices, and you know, there's lots of benefits. I get that. It just annoys me. So one of the things that I want to be able to do is to bring the online programs and to make them as accessible as possible to as many people as possible, and to give people the tools and techniques that if they do the program, they can do it with other people. And then if they want to come back and learn more, of course they can come back and learn more. But you know, I would like people to keep coming back as opposed to me continually selling to them, because I just don't like that. And it's got nothing to do with not valuing myself. I absolutely do. And I know there's an intrinsic value to whatever I do. But the modern world it's always selling, always selling. And I haven't made peace with that.
I hear you. I'm on the same page with you on that. Absolutely. We'll talk about your business and the current ethics or lack of thereof in the world of business, especially online, in our next conversation. So listen, I salute you. You're a cheerleader with a heart. Keep shining your light, my friend. Keep blessing the world, your presence, your impact, your smile, everything you do. Keep sharing your gift. You yourself are a gift, James. So God bless, and talk to you very soon next time. Take care, man.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much. Talk soon.
Pleasure all
Bye.
mine. Take care. Bye.